Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and for my kind of midweek video this week, I'm going to be reviewing Brandon Sanderson's novellas. So if you saw my short last week, I recently finished Arcanum Unbounded by Brandon Sanderson, which is his collection of all of the novellas with the exception, except for Dawn Shard. It's the only one of his novellas that isn't included, Cosmere novellas, which isn't included here in Arcanum Unbound. And so this week, I thought I would try out my first ranking video here on my channel. I've mostly stuck to kind of the book reviews. And so I'm going to try my first ranking video of all of Brandon Sanderson's novellas with a focus on, obviously focusing on the ones here in Arcanum Unbound, because I haven't done even a mini review of them like I have for Dawn Shard. So this is obviously going to be very spoiler heavy, but I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much to all my to my new subscribers. And don't forget, if you're enjoying my videos and want to see more book reviews, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and sometime next week I will actually be doing a special edition review, very similar to my Discworld Emporium review. I will be doing a special edition review next week if you want to catch that. So without further ado, let's get into the rankings. In 10th and last place is going to be The 11th Metal. Of all of the novellas that Brandon Sanderson wrote, this one feels like it adds the least to either both the world that it inhabits, the Cosmere as a whole, and even the characters that are present in the story. The 11th Metal kind of acts almost as it makes sense for why it was written. It was written as part of a RPG book to introduce people to the magic system of Scadrial, of Allomancy, and that it clearly shows. It is basically reiterating the points that we've already seen about Allomancy. If you've read the first Mistborn book, it's a lot of repetition, and really the only plot elements that are featured here in the 11th Metal that aren't featured anywhere else is how Kelsier first gets the idea of the 11th Metal, which doesn't really matter in the grand scope of things. Where he got the information about this mysterious 11th Metal doesn't actually matter in the grand scope of the Cosmere, or even the books in which the plot point is present, so it easily ranks last among the Cosmere short stories. And in 9th place is going to be The Hope of Elantris. It was a cute short story. Honestly, the backstory behind it is better than the story itself. But as someone who's not a big fan of Elantris, it's fine. It doesn't give us anything new to the Cosmere. Just kind of exploring a short story, kind of exploring a character that isn't present in the original Elantris, and kind of. There's not much substance to it. It is interesting to see further use of the Aeons as they're discovering that they can use them for the first time, but it doesn't really have a larger impact and is a kind of a forgettable story. And in 8th place is Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Elantra. The reason that this is so far down is mostly because it doesn't have Cosmere connections. It was because of its short nature, and particularly the footnotes. It made it one of the more enjoyable. It made it one of the more enjoyable segments of Arcanum Unbound. Especially the footnotes. They're very Discworldian, or something that Randall Munroe would write, and that. The story itself is fairly forgettable. Allomancer Jack is a protagonist, but the footnotes really bring it together and make it so funny. And Brandon Sanderson did write in the postscript that this was one of the most fun times he's had writing a story, is writing the postscripts for the Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Elantra. And if it just had more Cosmere connections, it would have ranked higher. This was an incredibly enjoyable read and probably one of the funniest parts of Arcanum Unbound. Alright, in 7th place is going to be White Sand. I'm putting it here because part of Volume 1 is included in Arcanum Unbound. I was not the biggest fan of White Sand. The magic system is fine, I guess. The story is okay. It's largely forgettable. But for me, as someone who's not the biggest graphic novel fan, it, above all of Sanderson's works, felt like homework to have to read through it. The first part isn't bad, but I do think it gets better the further along you get. And really, what's elevating this is the Cosmere connections, is the fact that there are characters, Karis in White Sand, who appears quite often throughout Stormlight as a Cosmere scholar throughout Stormlight, the Stormlight epigraphs, and in the art and the drawings inside of the Stormlight books. So it's more because of the Cosmere connections rather than anything else that elevates White Sand. I do think Brandon Sanderson isn't at his best when it comes to writing in a graphic novel. Obviously, it's a very different format, so it's gonna be weird to read Sanderson as a graphic novel form, but I just was not a super big fan. And in sixth place is going to be Mistborn's Secret History. It was fine. Mistborn's Secret History was fine. It was definitely interesting from a Cosmere perspective. It was one of the most cosmerically most interesting novels, especially because we get the most information about shard interactions. The Ire show up, so more stuff about how Elantris is interacting with the rest of the Cosmere in Secret History, and the actual Cosmere portions are what elevate the novel. Seeing where Hoid becomes a Mistborn, seeing the interactions with Ruin and Preservation, and kind of almost an outsider's, not really a Shard's perspective, but a Shard's perspective of the events of the first Mistborn series, and the Cosmere implications of everything that's happening through Mistborn Era 1 is what makes Mistborn Secret History really great. Unfortunately, Kelsier is not my favorite Cosmere Sanderson protagonist, and his presence in the story is not, kind of drags it down a little bit for me. It's not bad. It's not necessarily bad, but it's definitely weaker than some of the other stories in Arcanum Unbound and some of his other short stories. But the Cosmere sections really elevated it to being quite good. All right, top 5 now. Fifth is probably going to be Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell. At this point, all of the stories left are really good, and I struggled to rank them because I liked all of them so much. Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell is really good. I love the atmosphere and the tension. I think the shades are super interesting. The cognitive shades are such an interesting exploration of Investor and the Cosmere, especially after seeing their usage in The Sunlit Man. The setting, like I said, is amazing. Kind of the very dark and foreboding atmosphere, and all of the scenes are made more tense of this fact of the 3 rules that they have to follow: no fire, no blood, no sudden movements, which makes when people are fighting each other super interesting. Which makes when people are fighting each other super interesting, as they have to work around that. They have to find a way to do what they need to do without angering the spirits. And then when the spirits are angered, it leads to just like a sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. Just the feeling that Sanderson's able to invoke in Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell is amazing. I love the protagonist. Silence is such a really awesome Sanderson protagonist, especially after reading the postscript and how he came up with the character. I found it super interesting. It's kind of like this aging mother who, in order to keep her Waystop alive, she's a bounty hunter, and whenever a highwayman or whoever comes through her tavern, she uses her unassuming nature to take them out and collect the bounty. It was such an interesting story, and it makes me super excited to see more of Theody in the Cosmere in the future, and how the cognitive shadows will interact with other Cosmere entities. In fourth place is going to be The Emperor's Soul. I was not expecting to like this story. I was not an Elantris fan. I wasn't a big Hope of Elantris fan. And so when I went into The Emperor's Soul, did not have high expectations, but I loved it. Emperor's Soul was so good, and it's partially because of the magic system. I'm not the biggest fan of the Andor as a magic system. It just feels too out there of what it can do. You just need to be able to paint a picture in the sky, and you can do practically anything. But the forging is such a creative application of still having that artistry. Not only having that artistry that's present in the original Elantrin's magic, but in the Elantrin's magic, but elevating it to something new, to something that's even more artistic, where you train to identify the souls and the histories of these objects or people, and using that to create this work of art, that changes the history of an object. I found that super fascinating, and the main character is amazing. Her confliction of wanting to escape, but wanting to see this project through to completion. And I really hope that we see more of forging in the future, because it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite Cosmere magic systems. It's not flashy like Surge Binding or Allomancy, but instead, this careful, slow, methodical process of, becoming intimately familiar with an object or a person in order to rewrite their history is just so fascinating, and I loved it. And I love that element of the Emperor's Soul. All right, time for the top three, and in third place is going to be Sixth of Dusk. Sixth of Dusk is such an interesting story for me because, I love the setting. Sanderson talks about in his postscript how fascinated he is with Polynesian culture, and we've seen that in several of his works. And once again here, the wayfinding, and you going to these islands to trap these birds is super interesting. And the protagonist is super unique for Sanderson. He talks about in his postscript here as well about how he has a lot of very talkative protagonists, and so in having Dusk, who is the opposite, who is very quiet, was interesting. I love the setting and the environment. The island presents so many unique dangers. Whether they be these giant monsters or bugs in the ground or a plant this plant, which, is harmless at first glance, but can lead to super huge dangers. And I love that aspect of it. I love the descriptions. The descriptions of the islands is amazing in this. I think Sanderson does a really good job with that in Sixth of Dusk. And then there's a lot of Cosmere in here. It's Arcanum Unbounded. It literally has the Cosmere symbol on the cover. But I love to see this new world who's been in contact with Cosmere worlds for a long time, but now it's almost them figuring it out themselves and figuring out we need to be more careful with these foreigners to make sure that we're not being exploited by them. I found that I love it. I love that moment when that moment when the world becomes Cosmere, because it's that moment of discovery where there's infinite possibilities, but you also have to be super careful. And we're getting there with Stormlight, and it's just the moment that they become Cosmere is just my favorite part of a lot of the Cosmere stories. So Sixth of Dusk in third place. And then in second place, the last two are Roshar books, but it is going to be, I actually have the physical copy, it's going to be Dawn Shard by Brandon Sanderson. Dawn Shard, which is taking place after Oathbringer. I really love Dawn Shard. I'm a big boat person. I love boats, and you look at that, it's a sailing story. And combine that with the humor of Lopen, and I've talked about before how much I love the engineering and ingenuity of the Stormlight characters, and how much science and engineering plays a role in the Cosmere. And we see that with Ryson's chair, and they're trying to, and the discoveries they're making with with Fabrials, and in order to, with the aluminum, and how everything works together was just super enjoyable. The introduction of the Sleepless was a really interesting concept that I'm excited to see Sanderson go further with. We also got, almost forgot, literally the name of the book, Dawn Shard. We have the first kind of introduction to a Dawn Shard. Like, if you've read if you've read Sunlit Man, yes, you've seen a Dawn Shard before, because Sigil had one. But here we actually get to see one of the Dawn Shards, like literally see one of the Dawn Shards, and now Ryson is the vessel for that Dawn Shard. It was super interesting to, especially the implications of the Dawn Shards going forward in the Cosmere. And then obviously the humor with Lopen and Ryson there was top notch. I really enjoyed this. And there's only one left. So in first place is going to be Edge Dancer, and I mean it's because of the protagonist. Lift is such a fun protagonist, and Sanderson being able to keep her fun personality, her pancakefulness alive, while still having her go through this character growth and taking a comic relief side character and being able to elevate her and to give her a super interesting character arc that I really enjoyed here in Edge Dancer. In addition to that, the confrontation scenes with Nail in the where she's either facing off with him or running away from him was a lot of fun. And honestly, just getting to see Lift grow and develop, her saying her third oath and comforting Nail on the rooftop, is just such a great scene, and just kind of continues along with Lift being such a wholesome character. Despite the fact that she's going through all this inner turmoil through this entire story of not knowing who she is or what she wants to do or why of anything, and I just love that so much. And then of course there's her Lift's trademark humor and her interaction with Weidel, her friend who she calls a Voidbringer, and it's just such a funny book. It's got great humor, it's got great characters, it's got great the world build. It's got great little bit of world building, not as much, but it's got wonderful character arcs. Edge Dancer checked all the boxes for me. I love this novel. I love this short story. Alright, so that was my ranking of the Arcanum, Unbound, and short story and novellas by Brandon Sanderson. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, next week I should have a special edition review out for you, and then as soon as I can finish planning it, I will have my Cosmere review, my Cosmere ranking and review, as we're getting ready for Wind and Truth to hit shelves this December. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you for my weekly recap and my videos next week. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Bye.